The gated community of Willow Crest was the kind of place where nothing ever seemed to happen. At least on the surface. Perfectly trimmed hedges, white picket fences, and cheerful mailboxes lined the streets, each home looking like a postcard. But behind the pristine facades, tension simmered just beneath the calm. At the center of this quiet storm was the gate. Not just any gate, but a sleek, high-tech barrier that controlled every inch of who came and went. For most residents, it was a convenience, a symbol of safety. But for one person, it was power. Quiet, invisible power that no one else suspected. Ethan Lawson lived in the corner house closest to the gate. To the neighbors, he was a reserved man, a software engineer who kept to himself and his gadgets. But Ethan had spent months upgrading the gate's control system in secret. Unlike the standard HOA-issued keypad and camera, Ethan's version was sophisticated. Through a secure app on his phone, he could open, lock, and monitor the gate from anywhere. Every sensor, every camera feed was linked to his private server. No one knew, not even Margaret Hale, the HOA president. Margaret was a woman who ruled the community with an iron fist disguised in a velvet glove, sharp-eyed, quick to enforce rules, and infamous for her micromanaging style. She had long chafed at Ethan's independence. He didn't attend every HOA meeting. He ignored some of her memos. And worst of all, his gate system didn't answer. To her, tonight, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the warm glow of porch lights flickered on, Margaret stood at the gate's edge, scrutinizing it closely. She narrowed her eyes, tapping her fingers against the cold metal. "This gate is a problem," she muttered, mostly to herself. Inside his house, Ethan sat by his laptop, sipping coffee, eyes glued to the gate's live feed. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, ready. He could see Margaret's reflection in the glass of the gate's control panel. The way she paced, frustrated. The silence stretched, thick with tension. The entire neighborhood might have seemed still. But this was war. Silent, subtle, and digital. Suddenly the gate's sensors flickered. Margaret reached out to press a button on a small remote she'd acquired discreetly from a friend who worked maintenance. She hoped this would override whatever Ethan had done, but nothing happened. The gate stayed firmly shut. Margaret's eyes flashed with irritation. She pressed again. A few more times, more insistently. Each time, the gate ignored her commands. The power she thought she had was slipping away. Inside, Ethan allowed himself a faint smile. He knew exactly what she was trying, and he was prepared. With a quick tap on his phone, he locked the gate tighter, activating a silent alarm just in case. But this wasn't about confrontation. Not yet. It was a message. Margaret stepped back, visibly rattled. She glanced around to make sure no neighbors were watching. "This isn't over," she whispered fiercely. Meanwhile, across the street, Mrs. Langley, an elderly neighbor, noticed the tension. "What on earth is going on over there?" she wondered aloud, clutching her knitting. Ethan's gaze didn't waver. The game had begun, and the next moves would decide more than just who controlled a gate. They would shape the future of Willow Crest itself. The next morning, the gated community of Willow Crest seemed to wake without incident. Birds chirped, kids biked down sidewalks, and neighbors exchanged polite greetings. But beneath this calm, the tension from last night lingered. Invisible, but electric. Ethan awoke early, his mind racing. The gate's refusal to respond to Margaret's remote attempts had been only the opening gambit. He knew she wouldn't sit idle. If anything, this would only fuel her determination to regain control. He brewed a strong cup of coffee, eyes flicking, to his laptop screen, where the gate's live feed streamed uninterrupted. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, ready to respond at the first sign of trouble. Meanwhile, Margaret convened a small secret meeting with a few loyal HOA board members. In her home office, her voice was low but fierce. "This gate is a problem we have to fix. It's our community security, and no one person should control it like some kind of kingpin," she insisted, slamming her palm on the desk. "Tomorrow we're sending a maintenance crew out under the guise of routine checks. I want them to disable anything Ethan installed without approval." Her allies nodded, eyes narrowed. The plan was set. Covert, precise, and designed to catch Ethan off guard. Back at his house, Ethan's phone buzzed with a notification. The maintenance crew was scheduled for the next morning. Perfect, he smirked. He'd prepared for this. When the crew arrived the following day, their trucks and tools looked ordinary, but Ethan was watching from a hidden camera, perched on a tree branch nearby. The men approached the gate, confident but unaware of the digital minefield beneath their feet. Ethan tapped into the gate's control system remotely, locking down critical components. As the crew started to open the control panel, their tools suddenly sparked and stalled. One of the men frowned, checking his devices, confused by the resistance. "Must be a faulty connection," he muttered. But Ethan wasn't done. With a few keystrokes, he triggered a series of small, random gate openings and closings. Harmless, but unnerving, the gate swung open, then snapped shut again, several times in quick succession. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. "What's going on? Here? This thing's acting possessed," one muttered nervously. As the men backed off, Ethan recorded everything. Every confused expression, every frustrated comment, knowing this footage might be useful later. Meanwhile, whispers started spreading in the neighborhood. "Did you see the gate acting up again?" one resident asked another. "I swear it's like someone's messing with it." At the next HOA meeting, Margaret capitalized on the growing unease. "This gate is a danger to our community," she proclaimed, voice ringing through the room. "If it malfunctions at the wrong moment, it could prevent emergency vehicles from entering. We need to take immediate action." But Ethan remained silent, watching from the back. He didn't need to argue. His evidence was already stacking up. Behind the scenes, he sent encrypted messages to a handful of neighbors who had quietly expressed frustration with Margaret's heavy-handed tactics. He proposed a meeting, not to rebel, but to protect their community's autonomy. Suspense thickened as alliances formed in whispers and coded texts. As the meeting ended, Margaret's glare met Ethan's calm gaze across the room. Neither spoke, but the challenge was clear. The gate was no longer just a barrier. It was the front line in a silent war of wills. That night, as Ethan reviewed footage and prepared for what was coming, a new message pinged on his phone. "They're not giving up. Neither are we." He smiled to himself. The battle was just beginning. The next HOA meeting was held in the community center's small, brightly lit room. Rows of folding chairs, filled with wary residents. Their faces a mixture of curiosity and concern. The air buzzed with quiet whispers. Everyone sensed the unspoken tension between Ethan and Margaret, a rivalry that had begun to grip Willow Crest like a storm on the horizon. Margaret took the floor first, dressed impeccably in her usual power suit. Her voice was calm but sharp, commanding the room's attention. "Fellow residents, we face a serious problem with the gate system. A problem that threatens our security and our safety," she declared, casting a pointed glance toward Ethan. "One homeowner has taken it upon themselves to modify the gate without approval or oversight. This reckless behavior has caused malfunctions and puts us all at risk. A few murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Margaret's tone was carefully calculated to stoke fear and distrust. Ethan stayed seated at the back, his posture relaxed but alert. When it was his turn, he stood slowly and met the eyes of those watching. "I understand the concerns here," I said evenly, "but the facts tell a different story. My modifications have actually improved security. I installed remote monitoring, real-time alerts, and automatic lockdowns in emergencies." He pulled out his tablet and projected a series of graphs and camera footage onto the screen. "Here is data showing attempted, unauthorized entries, blocked by the system. Here are videos proving the gate worked perfectly during recent incidents when emergency vehicles arrived quickly." Some heads nodded, while others shifted uncertainly. Margaret's lips tightened, but Ethan had another card up his sleeve. "I also have evidence that the HOA president herself has overstepped her authority," he continued quietly, "including orders to bypass security protocols and attempt unauthorized access to residents' properties." A gasp rippled through the room. Margaret's confident mask flickered. "Lies!" she shot back, voice sharp as a blade. "You have no proof, and you're trying to distract from your own misconduct." Before the argument could spiral, a tense silence fell. The room felt like it might erupt at any second. At that moment, Ethan's phone buzzed discreetly in his pocket. He glanced at the screen and his eyes narrowed. A private message. "They're coming tonight." His heart quickened. He knew Margaret wasn't done playing dirty. This silent war was about to escalate beyond words. As the meeting adjourned, groups of neighbors clustered into small conversations, many confused, others suspicious. Ethan caught the worried eyes of several allies he had quietly recruited. The stakes were rising. Later that evening, under the cover of darkness, two shadowy figures approached Ethan's property. They moved swiftly but cautiously, carrying equipment designed to tamper with the gate's electronics. Ethan was waiting, hidden behind the dense shrubbery near the gate. He watched as the intruders began their work, but with a few taps on his phone, he sent the gate into lockdown mode. Lights flashing, alarms muted, but ready. The intruders froze, sensing the trap too late. Ethan stepped out from the shadows, his voice calm but firm. "You shouldn't have come." They scrambled to retreat, but found the gate locked tight. Panic spread as their tools failed to work. Ethan held up his phone, illuminating his face. "This isn't just about the gate anymore," he warned. "It's about trust, control, and respect. And I'm not backing down." As the intruders fled, Ethan realized the quiet neighborhood was no longer safe from hidden battles. The war for Willow Crest had entered a dangerous new phase. The very next morning, whispers of the failed sabotage spread like wildfire through Willow Crest. Margaret's frustration was palpable. Her carefully orchestrated plan had blown up spectacularly. Now, with her credibility on the line, she escalated her game, calling in an outside security consultant. Ethan learned of the consultant's arrival through a trusted neighbor who worked for the HOA's administrative office. The man, a wiry, intense figure named Carson Blake, was known for his expertise in cybersecurity and physical security systems. Ethan had heard rumors that Carson had been involved in shutting down similar rogue systems and was well versed in digging out secrets. The morning Carson's black SUV pulled into the community, the atmosphere thickened. Margaret greeted him at the gate, her posture rigid, eyes sharp with hope and calculation. "This is the problem," she said, gesturing to the gate. "I want you to find the weaknesses, the back doors, Anything that gives that Lawson fellow too much power. We need this fixed. Permanently. Carson nodded, pulling out a briefcase of tools, and immediately beginning a thorough inspection. Ethan watched from a distance, tensions twisting in his gut. He knew this was the most dangerous threat yet. Carson spent the day poking around the gate's control panel, scanning wires and data streams. But Ethan was ready. Before Carson arrived, Ethan had planted subtle decoy codes and false data paths. Digital mirages meant to confuse and mislead. The gate system seemed labyrinthine and unpredictable. Every probe Carson made hit a dead end or triggered harmless but disorienting feedback loops. Midway through the inspection, Carson's brow furrowed deeper. This system is unusual, he muttered to himself. Almost like someone's deliberately hiding something. Margaret hovered nearby, biting her lip nervously. Despite hours of work, Carson found no clear vulnerabilities. Frustration crept into his voice as he reported back to Margaret. There's nothing overtly wrong with the system. Whoever controls it knows what they're doing. Margaret's jaw clenched. Then it's a matter of time before they slip up. We just have to wait. But Carson wasn't so sure. As evening fell, Ethan sat inside, monitoring Carson's scans. Remotely, he felt the pulse of paranoia creeping through the neighborhood. Some residents whispered in corners, wondering if Ethan was hiding something dangerous, while others worried about the growing rift in the community. Ethan received a cryptic text from one of his allies. Carson's digging, but he's lost in the maze. Be ready for the fallout. That night, Carson sent a detailed report to Margaret, highlighting his confusion and warning that any move against Ethan would have to be precise and well-informed, or risk backlash. The story of Willow Crest was no longer just about rules or control. It had become a shadow game of cat and mouse, where trust was fragile and every step was a gamble. Back in his living room, Ethan prepared for the next move. The community was watching, waiting, but he had no intention of letting his secret slip. Outside, the gate stood silent and imposing, a digital fortress guarding not just the neighborhood, but the fragile balance of power. For now. Days passed, but the tension in Willow Crest only thickened. Ethan knew Margaret's frustration was boiling beneath her polished exterior, growing more dangerous with each failed attempt to seize control. Yet the real threat wasn't just Margaret's direct moves. It was the cracks forming in the neighborhood's trust. Ethan's carefully guarded secret was suddenly vulnerable. It started with a careless whisper at the local cafe. One of Ethan's neighbors, Tom, an otherwise friendly man with a penchant for gossip, had overheard Ethan talking on his phone late one night. Ethan was speaking in code, coordinating gate system updates with one of his allies. Tom didn't fully understand, but he knew it was something big. Within hours, Tom had told Margaret everything he could remember, embellishing the story with nervous assumptions. The leak was subtle, but deadly. Margaret now had a foothold, a fragment of the truth that could guide her next move. That evening, as twilight seeped into the sky, Margaret gathered a small group in her living room, her voice low, but electrifying. With resolve, "They think they're untouchable," she said, eyes flashing. "But I've got a lead now. Tomorrow night, we take control of that gate. Once and for all." Her team nodded, adrenaline sharpening their focus. Ethan, meanwhile, was unaware that his secret was no longer completely hidden. But the shadows had ears, and the digital fortress he'd built could not shield against human error. That night, Ethan sat in his dimly lit room, eyes flicking over live feed of the gate's control panel. He was alert, but a strange unease gnawed at him. Something felt off. Suddenly his phone vibrated. An encrypted message from one of his allies. "Margaret's making a move tomorrow. Be ready." The words hit like a punch. Ethan immediately began setting a trap. A digital snare woven into the gate system, designed to expose any unauthorized access. Every sensor, every camera, every signal would feed back to him, alerting to intrusions and capturing proof. As the clock ticked past midnight, Ethan reviewed his trap once more. It was elegant, silent, and invisible. But most importantly, it was deadly for anyone trying to override his control. The following evening, the neighborhood fell into an uneasy quiet. The gate stood sentinel. As shadows lengthened and streetlights flickered on, Margaret and her team arrived, their faces set with grim determination. They moved quickly and carefully, armed with tools designed to bypass security. Their plan was to break in under the cover of darkness, disable Ethan's system, and reclaim authority. But as they worked, the gate reacted, lights blinking erratically, cameras swiveling sharply, alarms quietly logging every move. Margaret's expression twisted in frustration as her remote controls failed repeatedly. Ethan watched through his screens, heart pounding but steady. Then came the moment of truth. The trap activated fully. The gate locked down entirely, sealing off access. Security cameras captured clear images of the intruders, sending encrypted live feeds directly to the local police, as well as a handful of Ethan's trusted neighbors. Margaret realized too late she'd walked into a trap. Her face drained of eye color as police sirens echoed in the distance, growing louder by the second. The neighborhood stirred. Lights turned on in houses. Neighbors peered out windows, some clutching phones, others simply stunned. Margaret and her team scrambled, caught between the locked gate and the approaching authorities. Ethan's voice rang out from a speaker near the gate, calm and clear. "This is Willowcrest's security system. Unauthorized access detected and reported. Please await law enforcement." Margaret's plans unraveled in real time, and with them, her grip on the community. The next morning, headlines in the local newsletter spoke of the incident. Failed attempt to hijack gate ends in police intervention. The story shifted rapidly in Ethan's favor. But even as Margaret faced scrutiny, Ethan knew this wasn't the end. The war for Willowcrest was far from over. The morning sun cut through the curtains of Ethan's living room as he sat back in his chair, eyes tired but alert. News of the previous night's police intervention had spread through Willowcrest like wildfire. For the first time in weeks, Ethan felt a flicker of relief, but also a heavy weight settling on his shoulders. Margaret was publicly under scrutiny, her authority shaken. The HOA board called an emergency meeting, and Ethan received unexpected invitations from neighbors he barely knew, some offering support, others wary and hesitant. But beneath the surface of apparent victory, Ethan knew the community was fractured, and that the uneasy peace might not last. At the emergency HOA meeting, the tension was palpable. Margaret's absence was noted, replaced by her deputy, a stern man named Robert, who tried to calm the crowd. "We understand the concerns about the gate and security," Robert said, voice measured but firm. "However, it's clear that unilateral control by any one resident is a risk. We need transparency and cooperation moving forward." The room buzzed with whispered agreements and anxious glances. Ethan took a deep breath and stood. "I agree," he said quietly. "My goal has always been to protect this community, not control it. I'm willing to work with the HOA to create a system that benefits everyone." Surprised eyes turned toward him. The conversation shifted toward forming a committee. a mix of residents, including Ethan, to oversee the gate's security system. It was a compromise, fragile but hopeful. Yet, as the meeting wrapped up, Ethan noticed Margaret standing alone outside the building, her expression unreadable. When their eyes met, she gave a slow, deliberate nod, a silent acknowledgement of the battle's changing landscape. Later that evening, Ethan received a message from an unknown number. "Meet me at the park, midnight, alone." Curiosity and caution warred inside him. Who could this be? ally or foe? He decided to go. Under a silver moon, the park was quiet except for rustling leaves and distant, barking dogs. Ethan's footsteps echoed softly as he approached the designated bench. Figure emerged from the shadows. It was Margaret. "You think this is over?" she asked, voice low and cold. "I'm not finished with this fight." Ethan held his ground. "Neither am I. But maybe it's time we stop destroying the neighborhood over this." Margaret looked away, then back. "I want control back, but maybe we can find a way to share it. For now." The unexpected truth shocked Ethan. He weighed his options carefully. Trust her and build a partnership, or stay wary and prepare for more conflict. "I'm listening," he said, finally. As they sat on the bench under the stars, the future of Willow Crest suddenly seemed uncertain. Balanced on the fragile thread of an uneasy alliance, back at his house, Ethan stared at the gate, its silent presence now more complex than ever. He knew this was only the beginning of a new chapter, one where allies might become enemies, and enemies might become allies. And in the quiet of the night, a different kind of suspense settled in. The question of who would truly control Willow Crest's gate, and at what cost. The fragile truce between Ethan and Margaret sent ripples throughout Willow Crest. Some residents breathed easier, hopeful that the endless conflict might finally ease. Others watched with suspicion, certain that the peace was a thin veneer over a deeper storm. Ethan's days grew consumed with meetings and compromises. The new security committee met regularly in the community center, where voices argued over access codes, surveillance protocols, and emergency procedures. It was tedious, but necessary. Yet beneath the surface, Ethan sensed something was stirring. Late one evening, as he reviewed system logs from the gate, a peculiar pattern caught his eye. A series of unauthorized data pings originating from inside the neighborhood, timed with residents' late-night internet use. Whoever was probing the system was careful, masking their presence, but Ethan's keen eyes missed nothing. His gut told him this wasn't just about Margaret or the HOA anymore. There was a third party. Someone watching, waiting. The next day, Ethan shared his concerns with Robert, Margaret's deputy, and now a tentative ally. Robert's face darkened as he reviewed the logs. "Could be an outside hacker," Robert said grimly. "Someone trying to exploit the chaos." The realization sent chills through Ethan. If the gate's defenses were breached, the entire community could be vulnerable, not just to petty power struggles, but to real danger. Meanwhile, Margaret's behavior became more unpredictable. She oscillated between cooperation and cold calculation, often disappearing for hours with no explanation. Rumors started to swirl that she was meeting with unknown individuals outside Willow Crest, fueling paranoia among residents. One afternoon, Ethan received an anonymous tip. "Look closer to home. The threat isn't outside. It's closer than you think." Determined to uncover the truth, Ethan began discreet surveillance of key HOA members and neighbors who had shown unusual interest in the gate's technology. His investigation revealed encrypted communications, unusual meetings, and suspicious behavior. Among the suspects was Tom, the neighbor who had inadvertently leaked Ethan's plans. Tom's nervous glances and secretive phone calls now took on a more ominous tone. Ethan confronted Tom one evening near the community pool. "What's really going on, Tom?" Ethan demanded. Tom hesitated, then confessed in a low voice. "I didn't want to get involved, but there are people in this community who see the gate as a way to control more than just access. Money, influence, even blackmail." The words hit Ethan like a punch. He realized that beneath the surface of Willow Crest's seemingly peaceful streets, a web of greed and manipulation was tightening. That night, Ethan double-locked the gate's controls and tightened security protocols. But as he stared into the flickering screen, showing the gate's quiet watchfulness, he couldn't shake the feeling that the greatest danger was not the gate or Margaret, but the secrets hidden behind the smiling faces of his neighbors. The stage was set for the final showdown, a battle not just for control of the gate, but for the soul of Willow Crest itself. The tension in Willow Crest was palpable, like the air before a storm breaks. Ethan knew that the tangled web of secrets and betrayals had reached its breaking point. Whoever was pulling strings in the shadows was preparing to make a decisive move, and he had to be ready. Late that night, Ethan sat in his control room, eyes flickering across the streams of data flowing from the gate's systems. Every alert, every ping, every unusual movement was under his watchful gaze. He had reinforced every line of defense, but paranoia gnawed at him. Could he truly trust anyone? Suddenly, a notification flashed. Unauthorized access detected. Proximal breach. Heart racing. Ethan zoomed in on the security footage. The image was grainy but unmistakable. A figure in a dark hoodie, slipping through a side gate rarely used. The one closest to Margaret's home. Ethan's mind raced. Could Margaret have betrayed the fragile truce? Or was this the work of the shadowy third party? He grabbed his coat and slipped out into the night, moving silently toward the breach. As he approached, the figure suddenly turned, revealing the face of Tom, the neighbor who had once leaked secrets, and then confessed to deeper involvement. "Tom, what are you doing here?" Ethan demanded, his voice steady but low. Tom's eyes darted nervously. "I didn't want it to go this far, Ethan. But they forced me. Margaret's not alone in this. There's a syndicate within the HOA, people who want to control the entire community, not just the gate." Before Ethan could respond, headlights flooded the area. A convoy of black SUVs rolled in, their windows tinted, engines humming like predators. Armed men stepped out, security contractors hired by the hidden syndicate. Tom stepped back, hands raised. "You have to trust me. They'll come after you next." Ethan's training kicked in. He sprinted back toward his house, Tom close behind. Inside, he slammed the door and activated a lockdown protocol on the gate, sealing the property. Through the gate's cameras, Ethan watched the SUVs approach the main entrance. But this time, the gate was no longer just a barrier. It was a weapon. With a few taps on his tablet, Ethan triggered a blinding strobe of lights, high decibel alarms, and automated lockdown bolts. The SUVs screeched to a halt, drivers disoriented. A voice boomed through the gate's speakers. Ethan's voice, calm, but resolute. "This community belongs to its residents, not to those who seek to control through fear and manipulation." The intruders, confused and unable to breach the gate, had no choice but to retreat. Police sirens followed close behind. Ethan had already sent an alert. The dawn brought relief, but no peace. The HOA was shaken to its core, exposed for the corruption, festering beneath its surface. In the aftermath, Margaret was stripped of her presidency, and a full investigation into the syndicate was launched. The residents, once divided, began to rebuild trust slowly, united by the ordeal. But the greatest twist awaited Ethan. One evening, as he was reviewing the gate's logs, he discovered an encrypted file he hadn't seen before. A message hidden deep within the system. It read simply, "You're not the only one who controls the gate." His blood ran cold. Somewhere, someone else had access. The battle for Willow Crest was far from over. Ethan stared out at the quiet neighborhood, the gate standing silent but watchful, a symbol of power, secrets, and the fragile balance of trust. And, as the sun set behind the trees, Ethan knew one thing for certain. In this game, control was never absolute. It was a constant fight, a game of shadows where the rules were always changing.